South Carolina is poised to join nearly half of the states in America to protect minors from permanent physical harms of so called gender affirming care, which is actually gender mutilation as a way of treating a mental disorder. South Carolina's Help Not Harm bill is on the move. Joining me now to discuss the bill's progress is Mitch Prosser, interim president of the Palmetto Family Council in the great state of South Carolina. Mitch, welcome to Washington Watch.
Joseph, thank you so much for having me. So grateful for you and the ministry there at Family Research Council.
Well, we are grateful for you. It's a great partnership that we have with our friends in the states all over the country for specifically purposes like this, so we can work together on really important legislation. And if you would, I know a lot of people have had these debates in their states, but just remind folks what this legislation does to protect children in South Carolina.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think one of the things that we hear so often is this reframing of the narrative, that it's restricting something or blocking something. Ultimately, what this bill and bills like it have done is to offer help to those who are struggling with gender dysphoria. Ultimately, we know that there are those that are struggling with a clinically diagnosable disorder, gender dysphoria, and many of them are only being told half of the story. Half of the story is that if they want to, they can undergo what is being called gender affirming care. And as you so accurately pointed out, it really is genital mutilation. It is destroying who God made them to be as image bearers and representation of who He made us to be. And so what we're finding is many people don't even know there's another side. They don't even know that they're image bearers. They don't even know that they have the opportunity to learn who God made them to be and get the help they need. They desperately need in order to understand who God made them to be as image bearers of Him. And so as they struggle with gender dysphoria, they're only hearing, you can take these pills, or you can get gender affirming care, or you can have a surgical procedure that will irreparably harm who God made you to be.
Yeah. Mitch, who do you find to be the greatest opponents of this effort to protect children in South Carolina?
Well, there's no doubt that the LGBTQ community has certainly come out against this legislation. In fact, in one committee hearing, they had over 48 people sign up for testimony. In the hearing that we just had in the Senate Medical Affairs Subcommittee this past Wednesday, they organized their committee very well. They gave us those proponents of the bill 3 expert witnesses, the opposition, those against the bill, 3 expert witnesses, and then they went for and against, for and against, for and against. We noticed that Women's Rights Empowerment Network, they showed up. The LGBTQ community showed up. And then many people who are not necessarily struggling with gender dysphoria, but their loved ones, their family members, their mothers and their fathers have shown up and voiced opposition for this legislation.
Yeah. How is the medical establishment there responding to this? Because, there's the personal stories, and you've alluded to a lot of those. There's so much money involved in this. We find the professional associations as well as the hospitals organizing. What's their activity there on this bill in South Carolina?
Joseph, you're absolutely right. There is a lot going on behind the scenes in the medical community. One of the things that I've heard over the last few years is that science is based on consensus. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I don't know that's exactly how science or medicine are supposed to work. So what we hear is this organization or this licensing board is for this, or it's prescribed as the standard of care. And that's a dangerous place to be when we're relying on boards and a consortium of doctors to tell us what the standard of care should be. In fact, I learned this past week that the American Medical Association, the AMA, has around 67,000 doctors. And that sounds huge. It sounds massive. But I learned that that's only 12% of the medical community. 12%. So if I'm doing my math right, that's about 88% of doctors who aren't part of the AMA who are saying maybe that shouldn't be the standard of care, or Empath, or any of these other boards. You're right. There's a lot going on behind the scenes in the medical community. And just to be frank and honest, there's a lot of money to be made through pharmaceutical companies who are literally chemically castrating children and adults, for that matter, who are choosing to do so. But children need to be protected from the madness that is going on all around them.
Yeah. And what's interesting, you refer there to the AMA. Oftentimes, when those associations make these decisions, they don't do it because they polled all of their members. There's some kind of executive committee that just makes a statement and they say, we're speaking for all 67,000 of our members, but those 67,000 members had no input. And in fact, it oftentimes, you do a little research, we can discover that it represents a minority of their membership, not a majority of their membership. But everything is becoming political these days. Now, Mitch, in addition, our friends around the country have been working on this issue for the last several years. So this is not the first time this has been debated. In fact, should this pass in South Carolina, as we expect it will, it would become the 24th state to pass similar legislation. Based on what you've seen in other states as this debate has progressed, is it becoming harder or easier to convince people about the need for this legislation?
To be honest with you, I think it's becoming easier. And there are a couple components that go into that answer. First of all, what we're seeing out of Europe right now is atrocious and alarming. And I gave this analogy the other day. If you had an older brother who had already experienced many of the things that you will experience one day, would you learn from the mistakes that he made? And the answer is a wise person would absolutely do so. So the European medical community has been performing and instituting these standards of care for far longer than America has. And so what they're finding is that they have done irreparable harm to thousands of European children across a broad spectrum of decades. Yeah. So Americans are now learning about this, even though they aren't from America. And we left England a long time ago, which we heard this last week.
Mitch, I want to cut you off and give you a couple seconds. Anybody in South Carolina who wants to help, how can they get involved in this in about 5 seconds?
Absolutely. PalmettoFamily.org. You can learn more about the Help Not Harm campaign there.
PalmettoFamily.org. Mitch Prosser, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.